And I asked Spirit, I said, what is my message for the world? What is the message that has been encoded in Denika Carothers? What has been encoded in me for the world? And this is the message that I was given, is my message for the world, that all of creation has a purpose. The table that you're sitting at, the chair that you're sitting in, the bottle of water that's on the table, this computer, the sky, the clouds, the trees, the squirrels, the lions, everything that was created has a purpose. And when we align our beingness, when we align the essence of who we are, when we align that God spark, the very nature of who we were created to be, when we align our beingness with that purpose, we live our full potential. Because the truth of the matter is, if you don't know who you are, you can't do what you came to do. I am here because I have identified that my purpose is to teach and help others to identify their life purpose so that they can live a life with purpose. Now, I come from a background of having a father who always tried to push me to live my life as he dreamed that my life should be. And so it has always been of utmost importance and value to me to help not only my children, but others discover their passions, gifts, and calling so they may live a life that is purpose and fulfilling. My father and I always had a struggle when I was growing up. And the funny thing is, I was so much like him, because his daddy wanted him to be a certain thing, and he followed his own path, and then now he wanted me to be a certain thing, and I was following my own path. And so as a result of it, we never really had a close relationship growing up, because I wasn't quite sure exactly what I was supposed to do, but I knew what I was not supposed to do. Who's the first influence in our lives in helping us define who we are? Our parents. And parents try to do the best that they can do, but you could correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think there's a manual out there that tells you how to be a parent. It's something that you figure out as you go along. And a lot of times what your parents put in you is what was put in them. And a lot of times, even though they don't like the fact that it was put in them, they still put it in you anyway, because that's all they know. They don't know anything else. But who you are is separate from who your parents say you are or feel like you should be. My father, who I shared with you, wanted me to do what he wanted me to do. My father owned his own business. And my father got his own business because he had bad experience with working for people, and he decided that he wasn't working for nobody, never no more, never, never again. And he didn't want his children working for anybody, never no more, never, never. And so his whole thing always when I was growing up is, I'm doing what I'm doing so that my children don't have to work for anyone. So I heard that all of my life. So he had his own business, and so he said, okay, well, she's smart. She could figure out all these legal stuff, so I think you should do corporate law. I didn't know what corporate was, had no idea what law was, and none of it sounded good or felt good to me. And so I didn't do it. Now, he was really trying to pull me into this identity that I knew I wasn't supposed to be, but I wasn't sure what I was supposed to be. But I know I liked people, and I know I liked talking to people, and I know I liked helping people, and I didn't care if the person was 5 or if the person was 50. I just liked talking to everybody. And so even though he tried to pull me into this, we had our little struggles, because I didn't quite know who I was, but I kind of figured out who I was not. In terms of education, I always had smart friends who got A pluses, A minuses, maybe an occasional B plus. I was like a B plus, a B, C plus. And so even though I was very drawn to all these smart people, I didn't feel very smart. I felt very insecure in terms of my education. Did not like studying. Did not like school, and my daddy wanted me to go off and do corporate law, didn't want to do that. So I decided that, okay, maybe college is not for me. When I graduated, when I saw all of my friends graduating from high school and going to college, so I felt very insecure in the area of education. Now, in my social life, I was like a social butterfly. I spoke to everybody. Thoughts and feelings are temporary and ever-changing. They may characterize your experience, but they don't define you. And this is what we need to start recognizing. thought, I think I'm lousy. Am I really lousy? Is that my thought? Can that change? Yeah. So if it can change, then it must not be me. You may in your childhood had to take on major responsibilities which you might not even have liked at the time. But as a result of it, you feel like you need to take on all these responsibilities because that's who you have identified yourself with. When you mistake your habits and responsibilities for your essence, you close yourself off from feelings of authenticity. This is why so many mothers struggle with their sense of self when their children leave home. Because now they ain't got nobody to take care of. They ain't got no responsibilities. They don't have a role anymore. And so, because they define themselves as their role and their responsibility, now they don't know who they are. I ask again, who are you? Well, first and foremost, I think it's very important for us to know that you are a spiritual being having a human experience. Who we are is spirit. And we're having this human experience that sometimes feels like it's messed up. But Panache Desai says we can only be who we are, and at some point, that has to be good enough. At some point, you got to embrace you. You have to love you. Other people mightn't understand who you are, but that's okay. Each person's thinking and core identity is determined by and is a reflection of conditions of heart. This is a primary meaning of as a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. Or that can be put another way by saying, as a man thinketh in his heart, so will he become. I want to share my personal I am experience with you. I was invited to someone's office to meet somebody who had come in from the island of Jamaica. And so we just got to talking. He was in broadcasting. I grew up in broadcasting. We started sharing our visions, what we felt like our purpose was and our path was. We were just talking. I feel like we had some things in common. It was a good conversation. And all of a sudden, in the middle of the conversation, he stops and he looks at me and he says, "Who are you?" I didn't know. I didn't know how to answer that, but I recognized in that moment that there was something very pivotal that was happening here. And so, as I had become accustomed to doing at that point, when I didn't know the answer to something, I went straight inside. Okay, this man asked me something I really do not know how to answer him. I need an answer. Who am I? And I heard very clearly, you are the incarnated being of God. You are God incarnate. Okay, so I grew up in the church in a very religious setting where I knew the story of Jesus. They was looking for him to kill him because they accused him of blasphemy. And this sounded very blasphemous to me in that moment. And so all this conversation is going on inside. I don't even remember that he's in the room. And I'm like, that sounds kind of blasphemous. I can't tell that man that. And I heard again, even louder. You are the incarnated being of God. You are God incarnate. So I had already recognized up to this point, when Spirit spoke to me twice, I needed to pay attention. So as boldly as that was said to me, I said to him, well, not really, really bold, because I said, this is what I just heard. I said, this is what I just heard. I am the incarnated being of God. I am God incarnate. I wasn't sure how he was going to take this because he was telling me he was brought up in the church and his daddy was a pastor and all this stuff. And he looked at me and he said, and don't you ever forget it. It was such a life-changing moment for me because I recognized in that moment that I am not this insecure woman. I am not this person who doesn't feel comfortable proclaiming that I am this strong, powerful being. Because I always tried to downplay myself so that others around me could feel comfortable. Because I realized that people were very intimidated in my presence at a very young age. Because I was always very tall, I'm not a small woman. When I walk into the room, you know I've arrived. And I usually wear 4-inch heels whenever I walk into a room. And in that moment, I recognize my power. But I submit to you all in this room today that every one of you is the incarnated being of God. The divine man that you can be is always the depth potential within the struggling human man that you now are. We cannot see or perceive the divinity by looking for it with our human eyes. This insight comes through an intention to tap into our intuitive nature. And we're all intuitive. We're all intuitive. We all have the ability to tune into it. And mothers know it. That's what Mother's Wit is all about. Mother's intuition. They just broke it down. Mother's Wit. Intuition, I guess, sounded too long. But we all have that ability. Some just practice it more than others. And in order for you to tap in to who you are, why you're here, and what your purpose is, you have to be willing to do that. It's like electricity. Almost every building I know of now has electricity running to it. I don't know what they're doing now, because now with all this technology, I don't know how they put the electricity on or how they turn it off. But one time ago, all the wires ran to all the buildings. So electricity came down the wires. Every house was wired for electricity. But if you didn't turn the light switch on or turn the breaker box on, even though you were plugged into the source, you hadn't tapped in to the source. And so there is something that each one of us have to do. But we become so accustomed to complaining and being a victim and searching for everything outside of ourselves when the answer has always been inside of us.